Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this video I'm going to be discussing 10 things so as to prepare for a potential civil war and the actions you're likely to consider taking if that ends up happening. This is because of a question that I got in my Spanish channel, Supervivencia Moderna. Lots of countries in South America in general going through a pretty tough time. Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, there's a bunch of different places that are getting quite heated, and this is a question I've been getting a lot in my Instagram. It's Furfal308. The link for my Instagram is going to be somewhere there below. Also for my book, Street Survival Skills and the Modern Survival Manual, I definitely recommend these two. And if you're planning on leaving maybe or relocating within the United States or somewhere else, bugging out on relocating would be the book that I wrote specifically about that topic. So let's get right to it. This is something that I've done before myself. This is something I've done more than once, moving around and such, and strategically so. When things got very complicated in my own country in Argentina, I took that decision and pretty much executed this sort of plan that I'm going to be explaining to you. As I say in most of my videos, these are things I've actually done, not theories or suppositions of mine. And I guess the key is understanding that you never say never in terms of, yeah, this is never going to be happening here. As soon as you say that, life kind of slaps you in the head and corrects that kind of attitude, because, I mean, you're seeing it right now, right? If you're watching this from the United States, you're seeing lots of cities in very complicated situations, and maybe it's not about moving to another country. Most likely it's about moving to some other state, which would get the trick done for you. I've talked with people from all over, different experiences. I've talked with people from South Africa that were leaving because the government is pretty much going after them, as you probably read regarding the white farmers in South Africa, and pretty much white everyone in South Africa is in a pretty rough position. People in Ukraine that had left. I talked with a guy from Syria that had left when the country was going through war. And yeah, you know, there's in Venezuela, of course, hundreds of thousands of people that left Venezuela, and this is just the reality of mankind. This has happened throughout history, will continue to happen. So, a few tips, 10 points to keep in mind so as to organize these thoughts in your head and make some preparations. Number one, first of all, continue preparing with the basics that you already know. Continue preparing like you normally would in terms of basic supplies, in terms of having enough food at hand. This is going to be giving you time so as to plan your next step if things are getting out of hand, if you're ending up without a job or it just becomes too violent. You will need these basic preps that you probably already have, but this gives you like a little bit of a cushion. Now, talking with my friend Daniel in Venezuela, he bought a year and a half worth of food, given that he saw Hugo Chavez getting into that position of power in Venezuela. And a year and a half of food, most people would think that's a lot. Well, no, because this has been going on in Venezuela for 20 years. So a year and a half later, he went through the food stash that he had planned, and it was still going on. The crisis just continues. This is why, basically, from a preparedness point of view, when you're talking about real SHTF nationwide civil war kind of thing, from an objective perspective, best thing is to get out of there. You may have different ideas, or no, I'm going to be staying, this is my country, I'm never leaving, I'll die here. That's all fantastic, and no one has a right to judge you no matter what decision you make. You stay, you're going, whatever decision you make, that's super personal, and no one has the right to judge you for any of that. In fact, there's if I look at some of the people that left Venezuela, those would be some of the more patriotic, most Venezuela-loving people that had to make that tough decision. In fact, most of the corrupt bastards ruining the country are still very much there, along with a lot of folks that got caught. But just staying in a place doesn't give you the right so as to judge what others have done. Just letting you know. And now, talking from a personal position, life is just too damn short for that kind of bullshit. When you just don't enjoy life anymore, when your life is just, what I personally felt was that my life was on hold because everything was a damn disaster. Politically, huge mess, just a corrupt socialist nonsense of a government, so dangerous out there you couldn't even go out and have a good time with your family, with your friends. So I felt that my life was on hold, and I just couldn't keep on doing that, and always on a red state of awareness, because you just never know when you're going to be getting hit. Years and years like that, it just drives you nuts. And I made a decision of, I'm not going to be living like this anymore, and I'm super happy I made that decision. Now, it's no walk in the park, it's not easy, you're always going to be missing home, right? But life is, when it gets to that point, life is indeed better, at least from the way I see it. Is better in some safer, more stable places. All right, but it's important to keep on preparing like you normally would, because at the end of the day, you may be planning for making this step, and you may never end up going through with it, right? But it doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare for it if this is something you see in the horizon. All right. Number 2, stay healthy and take care of yourself. Physically speaking, psychologically speaking as well. You have to keep your head cool. You have to stay calm. But what I mean specifically here is anything that you have, getting your teeth fixed, any surgery you had, to take care of eventually. Try doing all of that ahead of time, because once you're jumping ship, once you're getting on a plane and moving somewhere else, you will not have the time, and you don't want to have to deal with all of this in the middle of making such a big decision. Number 3, get your actual passport. A lot of people don't have their passport. That is kind of nonsense. It just shows that you're really not prepared. No matter what you're planning on doing, you just never know when, your son, your daughter, a loved one, whatever, they travel and they got into a problem, they had an accident, and you have to travel all of a sudden, completely unexpected, and you don't have the freaking passport, you're not going. So it is an essential basic tool any prepper, any survivalist should have. No matter what you're planning on doing, get yourself a passport like any other grown-ass man, right? I think that makes a lot of sense. Even if you're not planning on doing anything, it is a tool that allows you to move freely around the world, and that's something you definitely want to have. Number 4, sell what you don't need right now. And this is just a good piece of advice in general. Most people that I know have a pile of crap around their house that they just don't need, and it would be much better to convert that to actual cash. It is especially true for lots of Americans that often are a little bit more inclined to buying crap they don't actually need. We all do that. No one is immune to that. We all have to raise our hands. But in general, in my experience, having traveled and seen different places and countries and such, it is even a little bit more so in the United States with this thing of buying stuff that you just have it around and you never actually use it. Now, in terms of your strategy, if you ever have to make a move, no matter if you're moving to another state kind of in a hurry because of your own state ends up going south a little bit faster than expected, or you're moving entirely to another country, whatever it is, you don't want to have to drag around junk that you could actually have sold before, and get rid of it and actually get cash that is going to be coming handy for that move. So anything that you don't actually need, start selling it right now. And yeah, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and admit that I could do that myself, but keeping it real, keeping it honest here. It's going to be facilitating things quite a bit. And you have to find the sweet spot here. If you see things getting a little bit worse, and you're thinking, man, I may have to do, make some tough decisions, especially if you're leaving the country behind, wherever it is that you are. It's stuff like guns. It's going to be a little bit harder to sell. Some guns are harder to sell than others. For example, a Glock. A Glock is the easiest gun to sell for a reasonable price if you bought it for a reasonable price already. If you bought a used Glock, you can flip it it's almost like cash in your hand. Now, an antique, that's the kind of thing that you may not be using, you may not be relying on it for security, for self-defense, and it's going to be taking a lot more to sell, more time so as to get a good price. So that may be the thing you kind of get focused on selling ahead of time if you see the possibility of having to make this kind of move, right? Yeah, so sell whatever it is that you're not needing, you're not using. Number 5, save up money. Moving to another state, to another country, it's going to be demanding quite a bit of cash. And it's about plane tickets, it's about getting set up, whatever it's going to be a lot easier if you actually have the money for it. And it's a combination of cash, of money in the bank, if you have precious metals. Here is where some of the stuff I've talked about before in terms of silver being heavy. If you're going to be dragging precious metals, you'll notice how heavy silver gets. Gold is a lot more compact, a lot easier to drag around, move from one place to another, especially if you're going to be taking a plane moving out of the country. There's limits for that sort of thing. Last time I checked, the limit in terms of cash, if you're leaving the United States, is $10,000 per group. All right, so it's your entire family can only have $10,000 worth of cash. And, you know, if that's the limit, that's something you may have to deal with. So if you don't have an account abroad, if you don't have those options, then that's the limit you may have to face once you're leaving. And if you didn't know about this, someone will take that money out of you. So be prepared for that sort of thing. In Europe, it's $10,000 per person. So if it's a family of 5, each one can have $10,000. And you know, if you're leaving with your family, wife, kids, then that gives you a little bit more flexibility. If you are limited to those $10,000, it may be a little bit of a problem. You can work around this somewhat, or at least you can work around it quite nicely with cryptocurrency, which is yet one of the other aspects of it that I like, and that's why I always mention crypto as a great tool that's quite useful for this sort of thing. Okay, so you know, eggs in different baskets so as to diversify: cash, bank account, precious metals, crypto. I think it's all worth considering and checking what works best for you. Number 6, plan for your pets. This is something a lot of people don't think about, but you may have to decide who you're going to be leaving your dog, your cat, or if you're a cat person, what you're going to be doing with it. And man, when I left Argentina, I left my Jack Russell Terrier with a friend of mine. He had a big farm thing, and that worked out okay. But if you're very attached to your pet, you may want to get a pet passport. So talk with your vet so as to get that. It takes a lot of time. It's actually harder for you to get a pet passport than to get a human passport for yourself and your family. If you're not looking at leaving behind your pet when leaving your country entirely, then a pet passport is what you need. And it's going to be depending also on where you're going. But quarantine, blood tests, all of this, it's going to be taking time, and it's not exactly cheap. And moving the pet also requires usually hiring a company at times. It is a little bit of a mess, so look into that. Number 7, do your research as of where you're going. Right, and start planning which are the countries you would consider. Do you have any flexibility? Do you have family abroad somewhere that they could help you out, get settled? Do you have a second citizenship somewhere? What does that mean? If you have a Irish citizenship, right? Well, that opens the entire European Union for you. That's a great spectrum of options that you have. Most likely you'll want to end up in a place that you actually know the language, so maybe Ireland would be the place. But this goes for Italy, Spain, wherever it is you're consider going. Do your research, not only the country, but specifically what town, what city. Do you want to live in the capital where usually you have the kind of mess that you will find like in New York City, LA? Or you want to go to a satellite secondary city, 50K population or less, if you're looking to live more out in the sticks? Where is it that you're planning on going? What kind of place you're looking at settling? You can do this to a great degree of detail. I did it myself when I first moved to Ireland, and I ended up specifically in a spot that it ended up working out great for us because I had done a lot of research. I actually knew the different streets and stores because of using Google Maps and using the street view so as to know what you would be actually seeing once you were there, looking into the charts for crime, employment, and income for the region, demographics. All of this comes into play, so you're not surprised. The more research you do, the less surprise you're going to be having, and that's a good thing. So don't get tired of doing more than enough research, because it's going to be a good investment for you. Number 8, don't tell anyone. And this would be one of the things that you normally don't see people talk about, because they haven't done this or gone through this themselves. When I went through this, it was very important to keep your mouth shut, especially with the level of crime that we were seeing in Argentina and still seeing in Argentina. And I know some of you guys watching my Spanish channel as well, you're going to be cursing me because I didn't organize this in the same way like when I did my Spanish video. But yeah, I probably have to do this again. But this is important. This is key. Don't tell anyone about your plans on moving, because anyone with a couple brain cells put together will figure out that if you're planning on moving, you probably have cash, you've sold a bunch of crap, and you have money so as to get this done. And that means you're a good target so as to get robbed, get mugged, or get attacked in your home and your stuff stolen, or get that money out of you. So keep your mouth shut. Don't let anyone know that you're going to be leaving. And you have to be pretty airtight about this, because loose lips sink ships. This is the case. I've known of many people that ended up opening their mouths and getting hit and losing all the money they had for their move right just when they were about to leave. So yeah, be careful about that. Number 9, travel ahead of time if you can. You can do a lot of research, and it can be done so as to go without foot on the ground before actually going there. It can be done. I've done it. But it's always better if you actually go yourself and verify things yourself. And you can do this in terms of like a holiday, traveling to another state, shouldn't be much of a big deal. Traveling to another country, depending on how far that is, maybe a little bit more expensive. But if you can combine it with holidays, with some business trip of some sort, it's going to be very personal. The country you're considering going, maybe because of family, because of citizenship, maybe something that you talk with your employer, and there's a possibility of moving to some other place in some other state or some other country, and you may end up traveling there for work at times. So anything that you can go so as to any time spent there will greatly increase, will make that curve a lot faster in terms of the knowledge you have of the place where you're going. Number 10, leave a stash behind in terms of some basic supplies. Why? Well, because you never know when you may end up going back wherever it is that you're coming from. Things don't work out, you come back home. It happens to a lot of people. Some people just don't adapt. Some people don't adapt living don't adapt to a new state, a new country. Man, I know of people that left Argentina because they were fed up of the same bullshit I was, and a year later they just moved back again to Argentina because they just miss it too much. It is your home country. It is your place. It is where you get the jokes, and you're used to this. And it's tough. It's not easy to adapt to a completely different culture, a completely different country. And some people do it and are happy with it, and it's great for them. Some folks, not the case. And it may well be the case for you if you're leaving. I mean, man, I've advised people many times in some of these decisions. I'm usually pretty good at it, and some people that I advise not to go for it in their specific case, what they were suggesting, they ended up regretting not following my advice more than once, and people that follow my advice usually were quite happy with it. To be completely honest, I never ended up someone telling me, man, you screwed me over, this sucks. So I guess I'm kind of accurate so as to determine what's a good move or not. So I hope I kind of transmit this in this video, and of course, as I said before, my books will help you out with lots of these things, staying or going. You have the options there so as to do your own research. Folks, subscribe to the channel. I'm really trying to get to those 60,000 subscribers. Already close to 180,000 in my Spanish channel. So guys, don't let me down here. Let me see if I get closer to those numbers in my Spanish channel as well. Subscribe, share, see you on the next video. Have an awesome day. Take care, folks.